everybody. We've had some really good feedback from the last video that we posted, looking at some of the impacts around catastrophic loss, and that was a taster session. We're hoping to run a course on that in the autumn, probably October, depending on lockdown and COVID-19, of course. What we wanted to do was say, if you have any questions or you'd like us to talk about a different type of subject, then please just get in touch with us at office@ashar.org.uk. But what we wanted to do today was just begin to do an introduction into some taster sessions that we will be running courses for later on in the year and next year. And what I wanted to do, following on from the last video that we did, was to talk about how we manage what we feel when we've experienced loss. So I wanted to sort of like do that again, interview style, with Chris. Welcome, Chris. Thank you for sharing your story and your teaching and knowledge. So if we're talking about how we manage what we feel in loss, that is I'm very aware that feelings can be quite intense when we have journeyed catastrophic loss or loss of any kind, really. And we're talking about the difference between grief, as in losing a job or career, and bereavement, where grief is part of the loss because of death, and we deal with them a little differently, I think, or we can deal with them a little differently. So if I was to ask that question of you, how did you manage what you felt or feel even?
I would have to be very honest and tell you that it's different every time you hit against the loss, and so I think at the beginning of our journey we weren't really dealing with the loss for a very long time. I think we were dealing with the shock of what had happened, because there was no warning and no explanations, and so we were dealing with the shock. And I think there were times when you just didn't feel anything and you were numb, completely numbed out, and those were hard times to kind of get your head round, because you felt you should be feeling something and you weren't. And then when you were feeling something incredibly intensely, then you felt, is it okay to feel this or not? And invariably we were in a household situation with our daughter and the children. So often for me, the intensity of the feeling was late at night when they were all in bed, and I was either on my own or with my husband. I think it's very different for everybody, and it's very different at every point on the journey. I think I said last time we talked about it, I can go back to feeling this intense emotion that overwhelms me almost at a click of a key, a click of a key. I was putting his name into something and bang, the emotion was there. And other times when you think you're all right, and then suddenly you're not all right, and you're very overwhelmed by the emotion of it.
I think when we talk about loss and feelings, and grief is not a linear process, is it? It's very much giving yourself permission to, sometimes it is like a wave, sometimes it's like a tsunami. And what I've just heard you say is, initially when you first journeyed it, you weren't in the loss, you were in the shock.
Yeah.
And just giving yourself permission to acknowledge that you were in shock, and as part of that loss process, what advice would you give to somebody who may be journeying that awareness that, or not being aware that they're stuck in shock?
Yeah, I think obviously our situation was a bit extreme, and I think sometimes people feel that they haven't been given permission to experience shock, because it's not a big deal really. I can relate that to losing not the dog that died immediately after Peter, but my dog before that, and she was called Nell. And I absolutely in shock and grief, but felt guilty because I was, but actually she was my soulmate. So it doesn't really matter what your loss is, your emotions are right for you. It's okay to feel shocked, even when somebody dies who you're expecting to die. It's still a shock when it actually happens. You can spend months thinking they're going to die, but actually at that point of death and those first few days or hours afterwards, it's still a shock to your system. Somewhere inside us we don't let go easily, especially not when it's a deep and meaningful relationship.
Part of the emotional and spiritual health course that we talk about is a godly plumb line, the character of God, the character of how God created us in his image. And as part of that, which is in the emotional and spiritual health course that we do, and learning to living with loss and catastrophic loss will be parts of the things that we'll do of booklets and training seminars that you can access later on in the year, and if you're interested, please do sign up. But actually that godly image, godly character, we're created in the character of God, our identity, that informs our identity. And there are lots of things we were talking this morning about giving ourselves permission to mourn. So why am I talking about character or identity? Because in each of those aspects, they give us permission, don't they? How in God's character his image is of love, of covenant, of relationship, of worship, of grace, creativity, boundaries, being emotional, promise. And when we were in shock, those things, I just want to ask you a question. Were you thinking about those type of things, of how to deal with what it is you was journeying?
Yes. I remember we were in Australia when we got the news and we were woken up. It was the middle of the night, and within a very few hours we were on a flight flying back to England, and I sat down in a seat on the aircraft and knowing we had this 24-hour journey ahead of us, and I just said, God, what do I do now? And his response to me was quite instant. And that was to say, you do what you always do when you need some answers from me, Chris. Do what you always do. Well, I always sit down with a Bible, a journal, a pen or a pencil. I prefer pencil because you can doodle better with pencils. And I sit there and I say, God, what do you want to say to me? And I turn to scriptures that I know are comforting to me. And that's what I did, and that journey is actually all journaled in my journals. And I actually have some of the amazing things that you'll learn if you do the course came out of that journey. So yes, I did say, God, what happened? Or God, you love Peter, you love me. Why did you let this happen? Those are questions, real questions, with an awful lot of emotion attached to them. And it was okay to feel that emotion. Even on the flight, I have to say it was a 2-leg flight, and I was hysterical for most of the second leg of the flight. But God was there, right there next to me. In fact, he put on one flight, there was a lady, one of the air hostesses, came alongside me and just put her hand on my shoulder. And I turned to her and she said, is it okay if I pray for you? Now, how did she know I was a Christian? Well, my Bible was open, maybe. Was she even really a person, or was it an angel? Because we never saw her again on the whole flight. I don't know, but God provided at that moment in time, in the deep distress, for that personal touch to actually say, it's going to be okay, you can get through this.
So that leads me to another question really about the importance of being present and God being present, and is it okay when we feel emotions that are not necessarily nice emotions.
Really, one of the questions I would ask back is, are there any emotions that aren't nice emotions? The effect of those emotions might be, if somebody's angry and they put their fist through the door, then the effect of it's not nice, but actually it's a real emotion. And emotions are part of being human, but actually more importantly, much more importantly, they're part of being created in God's image. God has emotions. When I teach on this, I often use the story of Jesus in the temple, when he walks in and he sees them selling doves and changing money and doing all of those things. And do you think he really just stood there and said, oh dear me, I'll just push that table over because this isn't right in God's house? No, he didn't. He pushed the tables over because he was angry. And he said so, and it was okay. He didn't destroy anybody else, he didn't destroy himself, he didn't blaspheme, but he was real about his emotions. If Jesus can be real about his emotions, then we certainly should be able to too, because we are created in his image. And that's why getting the character point of reference, the leg on the stool, into your being as soon as you can. You don't need to be in a crisis to get that in, because it's in the crisis that you then need the leg to stand on.
So that whole giving yourself permission to mourn is important, isn't it?
It's vital.
And it's absolutely vital, giving yourself permission to be real with yourself, be real with what your truth is in that moment. And that's what we talk about in the Godly Plumb Line, isn't it? That actually the truth of who he is what sets you free, but the truth of who you are. Have you found that to be important on your journey of loss?
I think it's been, well, as I say, it's one of the legs of my foundation. If I didn't know that God loved me and accepted me just as I am, that I was a child of the King of Kings, that he is totally faithful and trustworthy and I can lean on him, and that he says that he loves me, and that he says that he will always be good. Now I have to say, one of my sayings that came out of this whole experience was, God is good all the time, but I don't always understand his goodness. And I don't understand his goodness in what happened to Peter, but I trust him because I know that he is good all the time. That's his character, and his character is never going to be changed by my circumstances.
So there is a sense from this taster of what we will leave people with, it's okay to give yourself permission to not have to know everything.
Absolutely. I think the reality is we don't know everything, and Alison could chime in more than I can, but I need to know why to most everything. I think I was born with the word why on my lips, and so for me to journey that, why did this come to this? How did this happen? It's really important, but we don't get all the answers
straight away.
We don't get all the answers full stop, I don't think. I think when we get to heaven we probably won't care whether we've got the answers or not, but they'll be available to us, I think, if we need them. But actually it is about realising that in this big process that you're in, you matter. You need to give yourself time. You need to find a safe person you can talk to. You need to find a way that works best for you to express your grief. For me, I listen to a lot of Christian music. I read my Bible, I journal, as I've already said, and I talk. I've discovered more than ever before on this journey, if I don't talk, I don't actually process. And so I need to talk to somebody.
Yeah, you said something the other day, didn't you, of actually, sometimes you don't even know what you're thinking until you've said it.
Absolutely. Sorry, I keep saying absolutely, forgive me. But it's true, I don't. I can be suddenly saying something and going, oh yeah, that is what I think and feel.
So that's okay to give people permission to go, you don't have to know what you have to say. No. It's okay to just begin to speak.
Yeah, but it's more than okay. It's vital that you begin to speak.
So there's some of the tasters of some of the subjects, really. One of the last subjects I wanted to talk about is actually blame, really, and rescue. That you talked about, if you would have been here, then it might not have happened. And or if you'd have been in a different place for somebody else, who, if it had been a different person or a different time, or I'd have turned right instead of left, or any of those things, what would you say to our listeners that are sitting with blame or rescue?
I think where blame is that, I would have to ask the question, who are you punishing? Because actually blaming yourself is like getting a great big stick and hitting yourself over the head with it all of the time, or hitting the other person, whoever it is you blame, over the head with it, and usually that other person doesn't really know that you're blaming them. And so does it really help the situation? I think that comes into the leg of the stool that's all about forgiveness. We have to be willing to look at this delightful subject called forgiveness.
Do you feel though, because I would feel that it's okay to go there as long as you don't stay there.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things God said to me in my journal is it's fine to visit the if, shoulds, coulds, woulds, whatever other word you want to put in there, but don't camp there, because it's a cul-de-sac. You'll get stuck. It's a dead end. It doesn't help you to stay there. But it's okay to ask the questions. Always okay to ask the questions.
And rescuing.
Yeah, rescuing is a difficult one, isn't it? Because some of us feel, particularly men, I think, feel that they have this inbuilt need to rescue. And when you've been unable to rescue a situation, whether that be a job that you've tried to keep or a home you've tried to keep over your head, how do you process coming out of the other side of failing to rescue, really? Well, I guess I'd say two things. One is, none of us are actually failures. Failure is an event and not a person. It's something we go through and learn from. And the other thing is, we have to forgive. We have to forgive ourselves or the person that didn't let us rescue them, or whatever it is, in order to come to a place of being able to release ourselves from the responsibility of trying to sort that situation, whatever it was, out.
Yeah, and I think that as part of the taster in that, I know I journeyed through that, and I know that my rescuer in me wanted to protect you and protect everybody. So you do what you need to do, and that's okay to acknowledge it, but it's all right to acknowledge what it is at the time, isn't it?
Absolutely.
And I think the key thing that we're talking about in this process is giving yourself permission to acknowledge what your truth is of what you're feeling, and then inviting God to be in that. And the course will teach us how to do that, won't it, and how we unpack that.
We really want this whole course to be about the how-tos. The how-tos of putting the foundation into your life, the how-tos of living through loss or whatever the other subjects might be that are appropriate for you.
Yeah. So thank you for your time, Chris. That's been insightful, and we just want to encourage everybody to write and suggest subjects that you would want to look at or discuss or explore. Because, as we've said, as we explore subjects that matter to us, when we begin to understand something, we can begin to, one of the phrases I use often is, if we raise our awareness, we are then empowered to make a different choice. And that's important in our emotional intelligence, how we feel, how we think, but actually how we know who we are. Which is more important, isn't it? Who we are. So thank you for listening, and we'll see you again soon.